Hello and welcome back to our channel. We are Baba, Pinchy and Buddy, the red Australian Kelpie travelling around Australia in our Nissan Patrol Gajaba. This episode is about our 2022 Easter break in Snowy River National Park. Snowy Mountains are located in the Alpine and East Gippsland regions of Victoria, and it is also a part of the border between New South Wales and Victoria.
සුබදසනං අපි දැන් ඔක්කොම ළම නැගිටලා කෑම කාලා පිටත් වෙන්න තමයි ලෑස්තිලා ඉන්නේ. අපි අද යනවා මෙහෙදින Buchan Caves කියලා caves වගේ caves බලන්න යනවා. ඒ ගිහිල්ලා ඊට පස්සේ සමහර විට බුක් එකක් තියෙනවා අපි ඒකත් අද බලලා තමයි අපෝ කෑම සයිට් එකට දෙන්නේ. කට්ටියම රෙඩි යන්න. I don't wanna let myself down. I don't wanna let myself down. දැන් ඉන්නේ Buchan වලට ඇවිල්ලා මේ caves වලට යන අපි අතට ගොඩක් පරක්කුයි කැම්ප් සයිට් එකකින් එද්දී මේකේ සම්මාරම ලස්සනයි ගෙවල් වලට තියෙන caves අතර තිබ්බේ කරන්නේ නිකන් රිසෝට් එකක් වගේ නේද හැබැයි ගෙවල් දේවල් තියෙනවා farms තියෙනවා ගෙවල් තියෙනවා හරිම ලස්සන views තියෙනවා අපි මේ අතර සෑහෙන ස්පීඩ් කරා මේ ගොඩාක් වයිඩ් රෝඩ් එකක මේගොල්ලෝ 90ට 100 ගණන් ආයි පොඩ්ඩක් රිස්කි මොකද අපේ වාහන හුලනොත් තාම අඩු කරපු ගම ඊළඟට වාහන ලොකුයි ඒක නිසා පොඩ්ඩක් රිස්කි කරලා කට්ටිය ස්පීඩ් කරා I'm not so far now. බලන්න අපේ ටුවර් එකේ ටයිම් එක පරක් වෙලා නිසා caravan park එක
turn right from the after the bridge, yeah?
මෙතනින් තමයි cave tour එකට යන්න තියෙන්නේ.
Yeah, it's a lot of cars coming here.
මේ උදේ tour එක ඉවර වෙලා අපේ සෑහෙන පරක්කු ගන්න අපිට යන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා අපි බඩීව කැම්ප් සයිට් එකේ තියලා ආවේ තව අපේ එක ගර්ල් කෙනෙක්ගේත් කැම්ප් සයිට් එකේ හිටියා. අපිට පළවෙනි ටුවර් එක කලින් මිස් වුණා මොකද ඒක 11ට එන්න තිබ්බ අපි එනකොට 11:30යි. හැබැයි අපේ සෙකන්ඩ් ටුවර් එක තියෙන්නේ 12යි කාලෙට. දැන් අපි එතනට ඇවිල්ලා ඉන්නවා. මෙතනින් උඩට ඇවිල්ලා මෙතනින් තමයි කේව් එකට ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ.
මුගේ වයිෆ් එක මෙසේජ් එකක් කළාද?
බාබා. මෙතන තියෙන පොඩි ඉන්ට්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එකක් අපි දැන් කරන්න යන්නේ ෆෙයරි කේව් කියන එක. ෆෙයරි කේව් එක ඉස්සෙල්ලාම හොයාගෙන තියෙන 1906 ෆ්‍රැන්ක් මූන් කියලා ඉස්සර මයින්ස් වල වැඩ කරපු කෙනෙක්. එනට එයාගේ ජොබ් එක කරලා තියෙන්නේ ගවර්න්මන්ට් එකට අලුත් කේව්ස් හොයන එක. 1907 වලදී ආවට මේ මෙතන පොඩි හෝල් එකක් හම්බෙලා ඒක බ්ලාස්ට් කරලා තමයි මේ ෆෙයරි කේව් එක හොයාගෙන තියෙන්නේ. ඊට පස්සේ ෆෙඩරික් ජේ විල්සන් කෙනෙක් කනා මේ කේව් එකේ මොනවාද පඩි පෙළවල් දාලා හැන්ඩල්ස් එහෙම දාලා මේක කටියට ඇතුළට යන්න පුළුවන් විදිහට හදලා තියෙනවා. මේගොල්ලෝ මුලින් හිතලා තියෙන්නේ මේක කලින් එක්සිට් එකක් වෙනවා කියලා පස්සේ ඒගොල්ලෝ ඩිස්කවර් කරලා තියෙනවා මේකේ ඇත්තටම එක්සිට් එක තියෙන්නේ මෙතන උඩ කියලා. දැන් අපි ඉන්නේ මෙතන. මෙතන උඩට ඒගොල්ලෝ ඊට පස්සේ ඒක සර්ෆස් එක හදලා තියෙනවා යන්න පුළුවන් වෙන. මේ කේව් එක තමයි අපි දැන් කරන්නේ. මේක තමයි අපිට මිස් උනේ. මුළු කේව් සිස්ටම් එකම 3 kilometers වෙනවා. දැන් අපි කරන්න යන එක කිලෝමීටර් 500ක් විතරයි දිග. තව අපි මෙතන ටුවර් ගයිඩ් කෙනෙක් එනවා. එයා ඇවිල්ලා පොඩි ඉන්ඩක්ෂන් එකක් දීලා ඊට පස්සේ තමයි අපි කට්ටිය යන්නේ.
You don't have signal now.
ඉන්න අපේ සෙට් එක දැන් කට්ටිය එනකන්.
ඉතින් අපුන් පැහැදිලි එකතුට යනවා. අපිට ටුවර් ගයිඩ් කෙනෙක් ඉන්න ගයිඩ් කෙනෙක් එක්ක තමයි යන්නේ. එයා කියන්නේ වහගෙන යන්න පුළුවන්. එන්න වාරදී කිම වහින්න තියෙන බලන්න. especially මොකද අල්ලන්න එපා කියන්නේ හැන්ඩල් එක පැන්නේ කියන්නේ යල්ලුවම අපේ අතේ ඔයිල් දීලා ඒක හැසලක නවතිනවලු ප්‍රේම එක ඇතුලේ
discovered. A man called Frank Moon discovered this cave in 1907 as he was walking across the hilltop above us. Frank was born in Buchan. He was a local to the area. He'd been exploring caves since he was a kid, so he used to skip school and do that instead. So he knew what in the limestone area that a characteristic of limestone is to find caves. He also knew the characteristics of finding caves. So when he saw some condensation rising out of the ground above us, he knew that was a telltale sign that there was a cave below him. So he widened that hole with some dynamite and dropped down 15 metres into where we're standing today. So that was that one. 15 metres down. So that was in 1907. So he dropped down with a bit of rope with just a candle. He didn't have any footpaths or handrails, anything like that. In 1912, when they were further exploring this cave, they found another tunnel. They moved some rocks aside from the tunnel, put down some throwing them got on their tummies and wriggled through approximately 50 metres. And that's how they discovered the Royal Cave. So the first chamber in the Royal Cave is where Frank Moon popped out from this cave. So it is one big cave system. As you drove in, you would have seen a swimming pool. Right above the swimming pool, there is quite a small cave up there called Duke's Cave. That's where the system starts. We then have Federal, Royal and Fairy. It's about 2 kilometres in length and split up into the different show caves. So we'll move on to the next chamber, so you can just wait for me there and I'll explain how these caves actually form and how the decorations we're looking at come to be as well.
Thank you.
So I'll be as quick as possible so we can move on. I'll just quickly go over how these caves actually formed. So between 60 and 80 million years ago, where we're standing was completely underwater in the ocean. As the land has been exposed, so tectonic plate movement and movement in the Earth's crust has pushed where we're standing now above the water level. Left behind with it a trail of silt, mud and marine creatures. So if we have a look up in the limestone, all the little dots there, those are fossilised marine creatures. So all throughout the caves in limestone, you'll see fossils. So that's how the limestone was formed. Where we're standing was once upon a time just a little air pocket that was allowed to form as this was pushed above the water level. As we've got rain on the surface, it's percolated through the ground or through the rocks and the dirt, very slowly dissolved away the limestone. It's widened the caves, cut out the caves as well. It's also helped form the decorations that we're seeing today. So these ones up here, and you would have seen the hollow ones as you're walking through with a drip on the end. Those are called straws. So those are the beginnings of what we call a stalactite. The stalactites are the one on the roof. Stalactite begins by forming with a simple drop on the surface of limestone. As the waters come through the limestone, it's picked up a component called calcite. So calcite is what makes up the decoration. As the drop sits there, deposits the calcite, a very, very fine layer. It drops off and another one takes its place. So over the course of billions of years with billions of drifts, you start to see the decorations we're looking at today. So if we have a look here, so we've got some ribbons running down here, so The limestone's on a bit of a slope. The decorations will form into what we call a ribbon. As they get bigger, it's a shawl or a cave bacon. So you'll see those throughout the cave. So when we're dating the cave, it is very difficult without removing the decorations and cutting them in half. We don't want to do that. We can date the sediment, which gives it a ballpark of about 80 million years for these caves in the lower spot. When we're looking at aging the decorations, so you're looking at approximately a 100 years per centimetre of growth. But that's assuming these decorations always have water on them. So as you go through, you'll notice a lot of places in the cave don't have water on them. We've had a lot of rain recently, so those ones are forming at a much slower rate. Only about 10% of the decorations in these caves will form to that standard. The other 90% you're looking at a lot longer, a few hundred years, just for that 1 centimetre of growth. Throughout the caves you'll see different colours in the decorations. So these are completely natural. Predominantly you'll see a rusty colour, so that's iron that's coming through with the groundwater. And then you'll see the lighter colours that's predominantly manganese, or it could be water that's come through at a higher rate and hasn't picked up minerals as well. Any questions before we move on?
Water trips on a rainy day?
Yeah, so you've come through at a really good time. So we've gone through 10 years of drought where it's completely dry in here. In the last couple of years, especially recently, we've had phenomenal amounts of rain. So it's really great timing. You see all the water and the decorations. And when we're getting floods and that sort of thing, it sounds like it's raining in the cave. It's quite spectacular. I do recommend coming through when we get a lot of rain. It's obviously a bit hard to predict that though.
Were you closed last week, the week before when you started raining?
No, so we only ever, very rarely will close this cave off because it gets flooded, so only up to like shin height. But that's a health and safety thing, we don't want to bring people through. But we're very rarely closed except for when we've had big fires and that sort of thing. Yeah. Alright, so if you guys want to make your way to the next sort of open training for me, and I'll meet you there. This bit does get slippery, so just watch your footing as you go along. So I'll just stop here quite briefly. So this chamber does have some great historic value to it. When Frank Moon had his first daughter, he named her Fairy after the Fairy Caves. When Fairy grew up, she became engaged to a man also called Frank. They were married in this cave, so they were actually married up here, in this section here. So you can see a photo of that in the visitors centre. We are unfortunately not allowed to get married up there anymore. And it was the first and last wedding in this section of the cave. Just a bit of history on the cave. So between the 30s and the 70s, there was power in the cave. It wasn't particularly reliable because it was generated purely in the reserve. They didn't get mains power until the 80s. When they first started doing tours, they were touring it in the same year, so in 1907. They didn't have handrails and footpaths and that sort of thing. They had ladders, ropes, and candles. So it was quite a different tour back then. When they put the flooring in, so we were walking on a natural stream passage. Once upon a time, a river would have run where we're walking. Minimal excavation has been done to put this path in. All we've done really is put concrete down. When I say we, I mean Frank Moon, when they first were developing the caves. When they were putting the concrete down, it was one bucket in, spread it out and walk all the way back to the top again, grab another bucket and come all the way back down again as well. So the Buchan Caves has quite a young history. So Frank Moon was a local to the area. His grandson, so Fairy's son, who she unfortunately called Cave. Bit of unfortunate for him, but he's only recently passed away between 10 and 20 years ago. So it's very young history. He still has descendants in the area as well. Does anyone have any questions so far?
How long did it take them to complete? Like years or?
Yeah, so I don't have exact dates on the concrete like the power and that, but the concrete and the handrails they had in pretty quick, probably up until the 30s, and then they sort of had everything in.
Yeah.
The handrails, a lot of them still original, like the rusty or older looking ones. So they're between 80 and 100 years old. Just goes to show everything lasted a lot better when it was made back then than now. Yeah, so we try to keep everything original as well.
Yeah. If there was an earthquake nearby, how would that affect?
Yeah, so we did have a pretty significant earthquake recently.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, it didn't affect the caves a whole lot. Do check the caves when there is significant earthquakes. but they came through fairly well unscathed. Same with the bushfires as well. We had pretty bad bushfires 2019, 2020, and the caves were very well protected as well. So if we were to have a more significant earthquake, higher than the ones we see where we are, some of the bigger ones might be affected, like decorations, but we're pretty lucky. Yeah.
Earlier when you said that there was some movement in the other part of the cave, was it because of the earthquake or?
So we're not entirely sure on that one. So the cave itself is safe. There is a little bit of rockfall above one of the walkways. One of the guides noticed a crack in the rock. He was obviously paying very, very much attention to what he was doing. And he noticed a crack that was new, that didn't have evidence that it had been around for a while. So they've got people looking at that, assessing that part of the cave, yeah. I'm not sure if it coincided with the earthquake though. Yeah. So is there any more questions? So we'll make our way through to the end of the cave where the barricade is. So like I said, please don't go past that barricade. I'll meet you there, and if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask any.
What did you say?
What is that shiny thing? What is that shiny
Does
thing?
it glow?
So that's called fairy dust. So it is still calcite, the same component, it just forms a six-sided crystal. That's how we see its reflection. It doesn't have monetary value if we try to remove it from the caves. If you touch it, it dries. So if you have a look up here, this is where people have touched it.
Oh.
So that once would have looked like this. And it's just been touched.
When you were telling about the wedding, you said no more weddings in this part of the cave. I was wondering if that still happens in the other parts of the cave?
To my knowledge, so we've had a few proposals. I think there might have been a few vows in some of the other chambers, but definitely not off the footpath. I don't think there's been full weddings. Like hers was like 50 guests down here. So they had to
50?
Yes.
That's insane.
Well, she kind of owned it.
So they had to come down in, like, they had to bring all their gear down with them and get changed in the cave because it's so muddy getting down here. So yeah, there's a really lovely photo at the visitor centre.
So just in here. So they've kind of technically ruined all that decoration. Well, technically,
Anything that they've touched,
which would have been that whole area. Really.
Yeah, it's just why that whole front bit there that I was pointing out, potentially why that's essentially died.
Yeah.
Could have been that they walked up there.
And they knew that, right?
Oh, look, I'm not sure that they knew how damaging it was to start with. Yeah. Definitely towards, like, now, so it was kind of leaps and bounds with our knowledge.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Oh, back there.
It's like a boat, yeah? Look at that boat.
Seriously? And stay behind the floor and
Look, see, come here. What's that? See? Let's drop here, and we catch the metal and make stuff making here.
You have people that try to go off the footpath like in the last story. Someone just went under the rails.
Wow, that looks nice, huh?
Yeah, so like the way you say it, it's like so important. This is what I say.
Yeah.
Don't touch it.
I grew up in a place where they told you what to chase, told you how to run the race. Every move was on the page, but I didn't like their way. Had to fight and misbehave, had to find a way to change, had to leave to find my way. Caught up in a daydream, I beat my mind up there almost daily. It's how I pass time, no opinions safely. It's how I understand what I want in this place, see. Cause everybody wanna tell you bad things, what could go wrong, what fame brings, but success is a finicky thing. And if you ain't sure, no, it'll never be. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down. I don't wanna let myself down, myself down.
No one goes in when you say it's not.
Of the tour today. So have a look around. This decoration here we call the Ivory Palace as well. It's a fairly spectacular display of decoration. So like I said, hang around, take some photos, ask some questions, but this is the end of the tour, so we'll get you to make your way back out again as well. Straight up the stairs that we came out, and then the first person out can just open the door and back up the top again. So just when you're ready, just head back. I'll just wait here.
Thank you.
After when he pressed up into it, he did it magically, like little fairy dust that he tried
මේකන මෙහෙම වැටිලා එකතු වෙලා දෙකටම හැදිලා මේකම හැදීගෙන එන්නේ එකතු වෙලා මිලියන් ගණන් යනවා ඉතින් අවුරුදු ඒක එකතු වෙලා විදිහට හැදෙන්නේ කනෙක්ට් වෙන්නේ කවදාද කාලයක් යාව තව මිලියන් ගණන් යනවා හැම එකම එකක් විදිහට හැදෙන්න ඉඩ තියෙනවා.
Told you what to chase, told you how to run the race. Every move was on the page, but I didn't like their way. Had to fight and misbehave, had to find a way to change, had to leave to find my way. Caught up in a daydream, I beat my mind up there almost daily. It's how I pass time, no opinions safely. It's how I understand what I want.
අතනින් අපි යන්න බෑ මේ දවස්වල පොඩි මෙන්ඩන් සියක් යනවා කඩ කටයක් කියලා තියෙනවා රොක් එකේ ඉස්සරහ තේරෙන්න දෙන්න. ඉතින් දැන් අපි ආයෙ යන්න තමයි තියෙන්නේ. උඩදී හම්බෙන්නේ.
go in a different trajectory, so again, see if there's more airflow or the white one is there. Yeah. Might have the water might have come through a pocket of manganese or something similar.
So, we saw in that corner when the water drops and it's collects from the bottom and come back in like a grow up in from the bottom. Is it? So when the water drops
So when it comes
in that corner one, like it's connect to each other, the bottom and top.
the bottom and the top. Yeah, so when you've got a stalactite up the top that's constantly feeding a stalagmite, so it just drops onto the one at the bottom, it deposits that calcite again and drops off. So it is very slowly building up the top and the bottom one with just that one drop coming down, and then they will eventually join and the water will run down the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, that means eventually the whole cave can get filled with fruits.
Yeah, one day. Yeah, certainly, especially because there's a lot of rock in the and limestone above us, which means there'll be calcite. It's not going to run out for a long time to draw down into the cave. So, yeah, it will certainly take millions more years again. So if Frank Moon was to come through today, the only difference he'd notice probably would be the broken ones in growth. Yeah, so that it's that slow forming.
80 million years, isn't it?
Yeah, so just to start off as a tiny little air pocket and then...
like small dots and stuff.
Yeah, or you see actual shells and that sort of thing. All throughout the limestone, because that's what it's made up of, is the depositing of the marine creatures and mud and silt.
Something fell off there.
Yeah,
That looks of things.
I like it.
Looks better with light, doesn't it?
Yeah, light looks better.
Using my torch. No,
Got some tree roots coming through as well.
Yeah,
where's that? Oh, here.
So that's how far they can come down as well. So they've got the hillside above us,
Oh, yeah.
looking for water. And obviously you get an accumulation of water running down the walls here.
Yeah.
So they've found their way through.
Where the hell did I end up in? No more water.
අපි ආවා ක්‍රිවික් බල්ලිය ඔය ආපාට යනවා ඊළඟට නෙක්ස්ට් ස්ටොප් එක මැක්ලබ් බ්‍රිජ් එකට යන්න තමයි හිතන්නේ අවල්ට කාලම හරි ද නිදාන් ස්පෙෂල්නේ බලමු නිදාන් මොනවද හදන්නේ
මට තියෙන එකම සීන් එක මීට් තේදි කියලා. මට දෙන එක අපි කන්නේ නැහැ මම කන්නේ නැහැ
නෑ කිය. ඔය ඒ කන්නේ නැත්තේ.
මේක මේ අර දෙන්න කන්නේත් නැහනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ කවුද?
ආයා බීෆ් කන්නේත් නැහැ.
බීෆ් කන්නේ නැහැ. ඇෂ් කන්නේ නැහැ. ඇෂ් බීෆ් කන්නේත් නැහැ. අපි තුන්දෙනාම කන්නේ ඇති වෙන හොඳටම ඔයගලන්ට. මට උඹ එහෙම සීන් එකක් මට මම තුමා. ඒක අවුල නෑ මේකට කෑම උතරන් තියෙද්දි කොත් තව කරන් බලන්න. අපි රැප් එකක් කන්න නිකන් වෙජිටබල් රැප් එකක් කන්න අපිට ඉන්නවා ඒක.
Tacos for lunch and leftover coffee.
Spicy okay?
Chuttak dah. Dekak vitar wage.
That was all.
ඔය කොහොමද ලෙටස් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ් තියාගන්නේ අපේ මම හිතන්නේ ෆ්‍රිජ් එකේ ෆ්‍රීස් වෙනවා
Too cold.
ඔව් ඒකේ මේ ෆ්‍රීසර් පැත්තේ ඒක zone නැහැනේ ඒකට තියෙන්නේ
මගේ no zone but
මං ගෙනියන හැම සැරේම සලඩ් ලීව්ස් එහෙම වෙනවා යනවා
awesome.
Oh, there you go.
That's all I've got.
Eat juice. Juice. Eat on the cup. You don't have plates, no?
Just
No.
keep on this. I have to go get mine using before I eat.
Maybe use
Nice.
one of those once it's finished.
You have to hold it.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll do that. Thank you.
Welcome back to our vlog.
Yes.
It is lunchtime now.
What are we having for lunch?
The most important.